accessibility checkers or ADA website compliance checkers they're better referred to as an accessibility scan. And an accessibility scan is an automated scan that detects accessibility issues. But they're not conclusive. And that's the most important takeaway from this video, is that a scan is the start, and it's a very good start. It helps shortcut the process. It helps reduce human error in manual audits, and they're very, very quick, but they're not conclusive. You can't take the scan's results, get the scan to show 0 errors, and then think that your website is accessible, because that doesn't mean that it's accessible. It just means that it passes the scan. So a scan can return false negatives, and that's very, very important, because it means there's an accessibility issue still exists, whereas none is showing through automation. What's important to know about the automated side is that this is simply a software that's going through using if this then that statements, and if there's something in the code where it can automatically jump to the conclusion that there's an error, if there's something missing, or if there's something inappropriately assigned, etc., then it will return an error. But while that is an excellent shortcut, and that is a way to find accessibility issues, it doesn't find all of them, even of the accessibility issues that it can flag. Moreover, there are still many more accessibility issues to take into account that the scan does not catch. But what is important is that scans are used by several law firms as a way to create the basis for their claims that there are accessibility issues. So law firms will use them. It doesn't mean that they don't use other things, but they do incorporate scans, and we've seen them used time and time again. Scans are very simple and easy to use, and that's why so many people focus in on them. But there is much more to accessibility than just the scan. Now, what are the differences between the different scans? There's actually not too much of a difference between most of the scans. Some of the scans are more basic, and other of the scans are going to include more accessibility issues, and maybe a lot of times they don't flag the entire accessibility issue as it pertains to a WCAG success criterion, but it will be like a partial flag. So the best scan is the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, or WAVE tool, by webaim.org. But there are other scans such as the Google Lighthouse is one, and it's based on, the Google Lighthouse is really a subset based on AxeCorp that is developed by DQ. And there's another scan called Power Mapper. There's all sorts of scans. They're all over the place. And like I said, most of them aren't that different from one another. The best one to me is not the one that catches the most issues, but it's the one that is highly accurate. It's worked on. It's very popular. It's used by plaintiffs' lawyers, is the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, or WAVE tool, and I'll put a link to that below. Now, scans are free for the most part. If you want to scan an entire website, it does cost more. You really don't need to scan an entire website. What you need to do is scan individual pages, because scanning an entire website is getting far ahead of yourself, because just remediating one page is going to take you a while. So you will need to focus in on that one page and then move to the next one, and then apply any issues that are found. You can apply those globally to any pages that are on the same template. So for example, let's say you have a product page. If you take and scan that product page, all of the issues that are found are likely to be found in your other product pages that are built on the same template. So that is one important thing to keep in mind. You don't need to have a full website scan. And constant monitoring, really, I mean, while that's it's nice to have, it's really not necessary, because if you make a change to a page, then you would want to make sure that change is accessible when you make it. Now, I would scan it as soon as I released it, But that can all be done at the one-to-one level. You don't need to have a 24-hour scan going. It's more one of those things that's nice in theory, but in practice, it's really not necessary. So WebAIM is completely free. You can go there and run a scan on any URL. It only takes a few seconds, and then if you want to check more URLs, again, it just takes a few more seconds, and then you'll have the results for all of those. So if you're looking for an accessibility checker, I recommend WebAIM. Of course, there are other ones you can use. AxeCore is more for developers, but just know that if you're looking for a website accessibility checker, these are not conclusive. They are more something that is used to give you an idea. I use them all the time to get an instant feel for the accessibility of a web page, but it's not something where I can conclusively say, oh, this website is accessible. Even if it has 0 errors, it doesn't mean that the web page is accessible. It just merely means that the scan is returning 0 errors. There could be false negatives. A lot of times not a lot of times, but it's fairly regular occurrence that there is a false negative. Of course, it's possible there's a false positive. That's more rare, but it does happen on occasion. But really, that's all getting to. These are only a starting point. They're an excellent starting point. They do have several advantages and benefits, but they are not anything that you would want to definitively rely upon.